Hi guys, Carrie here from Ooh, Let's Make That. Thank you for stopping by my channel today to see what's up. For those of you who know me, know that I am obsessed with tie-dye. I will tie-dye anything that I possibly can, from masks, towels, tablecloths, clothing, anything. I even tie-dyed my shower curtain. Total fail, but still. Anyway, I always look forward to summer because that's when I can get my tie-dye on. I have like a tie-dye fest with family and friends, and we have tie-dye all over the lawn. But here in New York, we are not even close to summer. There is still snow on the ground. I can still feed my tie-dye addiction with some smaller projects that are a little neater, that I can do inside, in the warmth, that are super cool, and I can't wait to show you. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel by hitting that button below. I post new DIY content every single week because there is always something new to make. So, if you are ready, get your gloves on because we're gonna get messy. Don't forget to hit that Okay guys, so it's time to roll up our sleeves and do some indoor tie-dye. I would start with some protection for your table and some gloves if you have them. And depending on the amount of colors you have, you might want to get some glass containers and you'll need some water. I'm going to be using RIT dye. I don't use RIT dye when I use fabric, but I do when I tie-dye on paper. It's just really inexpensive. I prefer the RIT dye in the bottle because I'm pretty lazy and you just pour it in the bottle. But I couldn't find all the colors I want and I wanted to do some blue dye today. So I'm going to use the packet. And what I do is I just make a little bit of dye because when you're tie-dyeing paper, a little bit goes a really long way. And I just put in like 1/4 cup of water. And I'm just going to put in a little bit. I'm not going to put in the whole packet of dye. I don't need it. I'll put in about 1/3. And then I'm going to mix it up with a plastic spoon. I just want to make sure that the dye dissolves really well into the water. So I'm going to take some newsprint and put it on the floor beside me and on the table, because after I dip the paper into the dye, I need a place to put it down that's going to soak it up. If I put it on the plastic, it's just going to bead up and it's going to soak through and puddle. So some newsprint is really good, or newspaper is really good to just soak up that excess dye, and it dries pretty quickly. The paper that I'm going to use, I love this paper when I do paper tie-dye. It's a Sumi rice paper. It's for Sumi brush painting. I kind of stole it from my mom. It's called Wnter Sumi paper, and it has these beautiful rice fibers in it that you'll be able to see after you dye it. If you can't find rice paper, you can use things like coffee filters. You could use probably some type of watercolor paper. This is just really flexible and super strong, so that's what I'm going to use. The first fold that I'm going to use is called an accordion fold. Now when you're dyeing paper versus fabric, you have to be careful because the paper becomes really difficult once it's saturated with the dye to open up, and it sticks together. So when you're doing an accordion fold, you're not going to crease the papers too much as you would if you did it with a fabric. An accordion fold is really, it's just going back. It's like a fan fold, same thing. Back and forth. Just like that, it makes a fan. And then I have small containers, so I'm going to fold it in half a couple times. And then I'm just going to start dipping it in. I'm just going to dip, for this one I'm going to just experiment and dip either side and see how we do. Just let the excess dye drip off. Don't squeeze it out. One of the things I love about tie-dyeing paper versus fabric, and I love to do fabric, is that you can open it up and see right away. You don't have to wait. With fabric, you really need to let the dye set. But this you can open up right away and see how it came out. So that is what the accordion fold looks like, and I love the way that looks, and it's actually exactly what I wanted because I have a project in mind for this. The next fold I'm going to do is just like a triangular fold. I cut more of a rectangle, but I think that's going to be okay. I'm just going to keep folding the paper into rectangles. And again, you don't want to really push the folds down or crease them too much because you want to be able to open that paper pretty easily. So I just made it into like one of those, remember those football things you used to throw in school when the teachers weren't looking? Something like that. So I'm going to just dip each corner. Next I'm going to try a longer piece of paper because there's some projects I have in mind that will require a longer piece of paper. And I am going to do another accordion fold. It's just going to be a little bit different because I'm going to do it on an angle. So the last accordion fold, which is also the fan fold, we did it vertically. This one I'm going to do it on a diagonal. And once I have my paper folded in the accordion, I'm going to fold it in half. Actually, I think I'm going to fold it in thirds so I can fit it in here. And last time I dipped it on the sides where the folds are. This time I'm going to dip it on all four sides. And let's see what happens. This fold gave me a really interesting design with these V shapes. I'm going to play around for a little while with all my dies, and when my paper's dry I'll come back and show you what we're going to do with them. I'll see you in a bit. So I ended up, after my paper's dry, with some really beautiful tie-dye papers that I can't wait to turn into some projects here. They're all different and I have a lot of ideas for them, and the first thing I want to do is I am going to cover a votive candle, and I think you could pick these up at the supermarket actually. So I've decided I'm going to do this one, which kind of looks like the indigo for the shibori type thing. So I'm going to do a simple wrap with this, and I'm actually going to use a glue stick, and I just basically have to measure this and cut the paper to size. So I've measured my paper about 7 inches high, so it doesn't go all the way up to the top. You just see a little bit of the candle, but it does go all the way, wraps all the way around. And I am just going to start with my glue stick right on the edge of the paper, and I'm just going to continue to put it on the edge as I roll the candle onto the paper. And I'm just going to pull so it's taut. I'll add some more glue stick to the end, and I'm just going to smooth it out. That's a really cool tie-dye effect. I think I'm going to make just like a little tassel for the front to add on right here. I have about I'd say 2 yards of golden yellow jute, and I'm going to cut it into probably like 3 or 4 inch pieces. So I have about 8 of these golden yellow jute strings, and I'm just going to attach them with a lark's head knot. I've added the fringe to the wooden ring, and I think I'm going to add just a couple of little beads for contrast. And what I did with the jute is I wet it. I think it's easier to work with it when it's wet. It helps to tighten up the knots, and it also makes it easier to get beads on because otherwise the ends fray. And once I get the beads on, I'm just going to make a little knot underneath them by splitting the jute strings and just tying a double knot. Then I'm going to use my glue gun and just glue it right on the front there. And here's our finished boho tie-dye candle. The next thing I want to make is a little trinket box. I picked this up at probably the Dollar Tree or something. And I'm going to rewrap this in my tie-dye paper. And I'm just going to measure from the bottom and just about 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 of an inch higher. And again, I'm going to use glue stick because I feel like it just meshes really well with the fibers of the paper. I'm going to bend my end in like this just so I get a nice straight edge. And I'm going to start rolling with the opposite edge that's not so neat and straight. I'm going to line it up as closely as I can with the bottom. And I'm going to put a line of glue stick. I'm going to just do it on the bottom edge as I roll it around. And I'm just going to make sure that it's flush with the bottom of the box. The tie-dye creases the paper naturally, so you won't get rid of all the creases, and I think that the creases actually give it a nice texture. So when I get to the end, I'm going to put the glue stick on the entire edge here, and I'm going to smooth that seam down. I have a lot of excess on the top. I know I said 1/4 of an inch before, but this looks like 1.5 inches, but just trim it a little bit because it's really long, and I really only want 1/4 of an inch. And then here I could fold it in, but first I'm going to put some glue stick on it. And then because of the nature of this paper, it has a lot of flexibility. It'll fold inside really nicely. So I'm just going to press down a little bit at a time and overlap what I need to so I get a nice edge on the inside. So with the top, I have to decide like what part of the design I want. And I think I'm going to center it between these here. Because of the edge here, I need to give myself, it looks like, at least another inch or 1.5 inches because I'm going to fold it underneath. So when I cut it, you can measure it. I'm just doing it by eye. So I cut more of an oval than a circle, but that's okay. I'm going to take my glue stick and I'm going to just glue the entire top. And actually, it's probably easier if I do it this way so I can make sure I have enough for my sides and any sides that seem a little short. And then for the sides, I'm going to cut, because I think this makes it easier. I'm just cutting every inch or 3/4 of an inch. It makes it easier to fold, and the fibers will just mesh together and you won't be able to see them. And then I'll go around my edge with my glue stick and press all these little flaps upwards. So now I have the top and the sides. And I'm just going to smooth it out the best that I can. Make sure that I glued everything really well. And I'm going to trim my excess, but I'm going to leave probably around 1/8 of an inch all the way around because I'm going to fold it over. But when I fold it over, I just want it to look even on the inside of the lid. And I could just put on the lip of that lid some glue stick and a little bit on the inside and fold everything over. I want to add a lid to this so it looks a little bit nicer than just a regular paper box. So I'm going to use one of these big beads that I have, and I'm going to stick it on with my glue stick, my glue gun I should say. And I have a really pretty tie-dye box to put my trinkets in. The last project I'm going to do with my tie-dye paper is I picked up these little tiny trinket trays, which I thought would be great for some jewelry, because I always have jewelry lying around or makeup. I'm going to paint them, and then I'm going to add some of my black and white tie-dye paper on the inside. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to spray paint these, so I'll be right back. So I spray painted these little guys gold, and I am going to use Mod Podge to get my papers just on the inside part of these little trays. And oh. I think that this Mod Podge has seen better days. It has like things growing out of it, but so with the Mod Podge, I'm going to put it on the bottom of the tray, and I'm going to put down my paper, and then I'm going to put another coat on top of the paper. This way it'll seal it in really nicely. The Mod Podge will dry clear and give the tray a protective coating. Here are the two finished trays. They're still wet. I'm going to give them about an hour, and then they should be good to go. And that's our third project using our tie-dye paper. I hope you all enjoyed making these different DIYs and learning how to make tie-dye paper, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.